Some of the biggest mistakes a lot of car buyers make when they walk into a dealership. Yes, through many years of my own personal experience selling cars and even buying cars, I've learned so there's some tips, some tricks, some things that hurt your buying options and definitely lead for you spending more money at the end of the day. You don't want to spend more money than you need to. Why would you want to? I can't think of any reason why I'd want to throw my money down the drain, and neither should you, because what effectively people are doing is making that choice to throw their money down the drain. When they're walking into a dealership, they're sharing all their cards with that dealership or that salesperson or the sales manager, and of course, once they share that and they make these classic mistakes, which are simple to actually reverse, once they make those mistakes, all over but the crying. You pretty much have to walk out, try another dealership, because once you sort of set certain comments in place, you're set up for failure. I want to share some of those things that I personally have experienced, I personally have seen, performed, and found coming out on the high end of that spectrum. So definitely some of the things you want to think about. So first of all, one of the classic mistakes that I've personally experienced are people that walk in there thinking, okay, I have so much money available per month. Everybody always thinks their budget, right? Everybody gets paid bi-weekly, bi-monthly, monthly. Most people, I would say 95% of the population get paid a regular paycheck from a job, a 9 to 5, that pays them regular intervals. And so everything in our society is structured around that. Your car payments are structured around that, your house payments, your paychecks from your job, whether you're doing subscriptions for, obviously some of your TV subscriptions, whether it's application subscriptions, maybe use that online, the digital stereo, whatever that is. I don't want to throw them a plug, by the way. Whatever it is, subscriptions, payments, everything is designed by a monthly basis. So everybody starts thinking monthly, okay? They think, okay, I have $500 available of monthly space to buy a new car. Okay, so they go in there armed with that information. They start thinking, okay, $500, that gets me into a car roughly in this space. You're probably talking about a $40,000 or $50,000 car spread out over the term of, 5 years, 6, 7 years maybe. And they're thinking, okay, as long as we make that monthly budget, we're able to pay all our bills. Now, I get why people do that. They want to make sure that they have enough money at the end of the month to pay for each and every one of their debts, whether it's the house. Of course, they got to pay for groceries. So even an incremental price increase in groceries is enough to take people under, and you have to make choices when you're paying at the till. Obviously, gas prices going up does impact your monthly ability to budget what you have. So people often go in there thinking, okay, I have $500 to spare with my budget after taking into account all these other factors, rent and mortgage and all these other things. I have $500. So they go into the dealership, and often what ends up happening is the salesperson's smart. What are you looking for? What you feeling? What kind of car? What are you interested in? First thing, somebody spews out some information like, yeah, I want a minivan, or I want a small subcompact, or I want a small truck, or whatever it is, or an SUV. And then one of the next questions is either A, do you have a trade, which is, again, classic mistake. Number one, don't admit it, whether you do or whether you don't. Utilize that later as a separate transaction piece. But say, well, at this point, I'm just looking for the price on some vehicles, just trying to understand what I can get certain cars for. And then naturally, one of the next questions that these dealers are going to ask you is, what's your monthly budget? Do you have a sort of a set amount that you'd like to spend every month? Now, that could be coming from two places. Number one is just, of course, coming from a place where, a lot of people do manage that way. So they already sort of have their head in the game. But the other place is they know how to fatten up their margins when you give them that $500 a month budget available. See, because what ends up happening is you have this amount, and maybe you only wanted to spend $500 for 3 years. So it might be a $25,000, $30,000 car. But they'll say, we can get you into a $500 a month payment. They might get you into that same $25,000 car, but put another $10,000 or $12,000 of junk, add-ons, paint protection film, roof racks, floor mats, all this other junk and knickknacks you don't need, but extend you another year. So instead of you paying for 3 years, you take out a loan for 4 years, maybe 5 years, of course, and they'll jam all that garbage in there that you don't necessarily want. But guess what? We made your $500 a month payments. And so that's what they're good at doing. They're good at satisfying that marketplace. Don't get snookered. Know what you want to pay for that car. If it's a $30,000 car in your budget, focus in on that. How much? Say, I don't want to really spend any more than 30 grand. you need to ask the dealer how much that car is cash payment wise. If I came in with cash or hard dollars, what does that look like? What am I going to pay for that? I don't want to I don't even want to hear it about monthly. I'll decide that after the fact. But of course, what you do want to do is ask how much cash dollars for that vehicle. Like if I were to come in cash or write you a check, how much is that car going to cost me? That's what you need to understand. And then you build out your monthly payments from there. Then you can say, well, I think we can manage a $30,000 car. And then maybe 3 years is, $570. And then to go up to 4 years might take you down to $480 a month. Whatever the deal is, figure out the core price of that vehicle first. And don't let them kind of talk you and weasel you into one of those other scenarios where you're stuck and snookered into a higher term. So in other words, for a longer term with the same monthly payment, because that just usually means they've padded that. They've usually, in most cases, they're going to try to add a little extra in there to increase some of their margins. I've seen other classic mistakes, of course. Back in the gone era of low interest rates, I personally bought a car at 1.9%, my Jaguar F-Type. I was able to pick that car for 1.9%, which is a very small amount of lending rate. But there was actually deals. And remember, GM and some of the other big three and some of the OEMs were actually offering up 0% financing for 3 years, 4, 5 years. Yeah, those were factors a few short years ago. And so I've seen people with a 0% finance actually drop, $11,000, $12,000, $15,000 as a deposit, a down payment against that vehicle. Now, while I know you want to knock with whatever's residual on your monthly payment down by increasing your down payment, the fact remains is at 0%, you can draw it out as long as you want. Why not minimize your monthly payments? If you have a 0 or a 0.5%, maybe even a 1.9, say a 0.9% or somewhere very, very close to 0, why not ride it out? Extend that out as long as you can. It doesn't matter. Most people are bored of their cars within 3 to 5 years anyway. So if you happen to ever see that day again where you have a 0% finance rate offered to you, don't take it over 3 years and then you hammer yourself with these big payments. There's no point. Use it, build a little bit of equity into that vehicle. At some point you might turn it around and then hopefully you're not underwater, but likely you won't be because at a 0% or 0.5% or even a 0.9% interest rates, you're not going to be. So generally with lower interest rates, like closer to 0, I would extend the term out longer, minimize your down payment. On the other flip side, if you have high interest rates like we're seeing right now, and it's not uncommon, right now there's interest rates in the US mostly around that 10.5% for a new vehicle. If you're lucky, you might find some rates. Some certain OEM dealers might knock those prices down or the interest rates down a little bit. Banks, by the way, are usually a little higher, and it probably helps to shop for those interest rates before you even go shopping for the car, so you know what to compare it with. However, check your interest rates. If you happen to be snookered into a scenario like we are right now with high interest rates that don't seem to be dropping anytime soon, whether you're in the US, Canada, it doesn't even matter, Europe, wherever you're at, if your interest rates and you need to borrow money on that car, my feeling is with that scenario is you want to have as much down of a deposit if you know you're not going to miss payments. Put as much of the deposit down on the front end so you shrink your payments month to month. Because remember, the bigger your payments, the bigger and the harder you're going to get hit with interest charges. So if you're in a world of these huge interest rates, why not maximize your down payment that you can comfortably afford, shrink your monthly payments. You know they're going to be hit with that 10, 11% interest rates. And of course, what that does is means less impact to you on interest charges. Yeah, you're going to be snookered there. You're going to pay it anyway. But that's my advice. If you see high interest rates, bigger down payment, and of course, shorten up your loan term as well. Of course, minimize the amount you want to pay on a monthly basis. So again, it all comes down to the deposit. If you don't have a lot in money to put down and we are dealing with high interest charges, I would suggest maybe possibly buy a cheaper car. I hate to say it. I mean, if you're looking for a $100,000 pickup truck and all of you've got is $1,500 to put down as a deposit, and you're going to have to borrow $1,600 a month for a truck payment, well, that's going to cost you a lot of money, and there's a good chance you're going to be underwater, within a few short years, essentially negative equity. So I would suggest if you're in a scenario like this where you have a small deposit or small down payment, huge capacity or like expense for that vehicle, I would rethink that. Maybe go with a cheap vehicle and again, as much deposit as you can currently with this high interest rates. So that's one big mistake people are making these days, and that's why repossessions are on an all-time high. Then there's another classic BS line that you often hear. When you sit down and you're finally writing on the dotted line or you're ready to cut the deal for the car, I've seen this time and time again. It's personally happened to me where I've tried to negotiate on a car and then they say, well, I got to take this to the manager. We need to discuss this. Let me go run it by them. So they go, they disappear for 5 minutes, kind of go there, kind of circle talk in the back. And in a lot of cases, rarely, I mean, the dealer actually has to get, or the manager has to get involved. In many cases, there's already sort of certain constraints built in. And a lot of these people already know what they have to deal with. So the sales folks already sort of know what their margins are. They're able to see it in their system. How much is the bottom line? And unless they're really pushing that fringe, they're probably not even going to bother the manager too often. So that's a whole design tactic to get you sort of scrambling, getting you alone, so they kind of walk away giving you thought, well, I got to go talk to the manager, and allows you to sit there and talk and ponder and think and get all excited. And if you have a spouse with you or somebody else, gets you talking over there, and it gives you a chance to sort of agitate the conversation and relieve the stress while they're away. Then they come back. Now you feel like you're in control, but the contrary, usually they've got the upper hand because they know what that bottom line is. So that's just a little bit of hogwash in my mind and what I've seen, that where they have to go away and say the manager has to come back. They usually have a pretty good sense of where that's got to be already. And I can't help but tell you about this one. I personally had a family member went down, bought a car. Wasn't with them that time. They signed on the dotted line. They came back home. And they say, look at my great new car. And we looked at it. It was great. Went for a little drive. And then they started talking about some of the things that, hey, you know, they put paint protection film on there. I got these beautiful floor mats that they're all weather. I've got these great set of extra wheels in the trunk. So winter tires they actually outfitted me with. So they put those in the trunk. I have all these extras. Of course, they even put fabric protection. And look, on the window, there's a little window etching on there, glass etching. They did all this stuff for me. It's great. So my first response, and I couldn't believe it, I said, how much did that cost you? So they went through, and they didn't really think about it when they were signing on the dotted line. But they looked at it, and it's like, oh, I ended up spending another $8,200 on all this junk. Wow. And they didn't even think about that. But because they also didn't admit, or they also admitted that they were dealing with a monthly budget and a monthly payment, that's how they got snookered. And I took them back. We had a good conversation, and I sort of schooled them on the idea of what I just expressed to you guys, where you don't want to share the monthly budget, and you definitely don't want to take all the extras. So when you're signing on the dotted line and they're offering up all those extras, like all those features I just explained to you, one of the things I would suggest is, first of all, in your mind already, no. Don't tell them that. No, what I like to do is take this another step further. Everybody's going to say, don't take all those extras. Don't take all those extras. I'm going to extend on that. And here's a little point I like to kind of expand on. So what I often do is, well, how much for that? Like they might say, would you like any protective system? Would you like any paint protection film on this? Any undercoating? Any of this? And they'll start pitching that. And what I do, instead of flat out saying no, well, how much is that? And they'll say, well, a PPF, we usually do this. It's going to cost you about $2,200. A set of rims and tires. Look, there's a set out there on the floor. Yeah, that looks like $5,400 for rims and tires. Glass etching, yeah, that's another $830. And then they start, and I ask them, and I'm like, oh, okay. I kind of play dumb. And then once they're sort of summarized the things that they're trying to pitch me on, then I say, well, let me think about it. No, for now, let's just go with the base price of the car. And I take none of it. But I let them tell me and express to me how much roughly these items are. Because then what I do is I take possession of that car, and it doesn't matter what kind of car it is. Maybe you got yourself a new one of these, and you take that car from possession from the dealer, and then you drive it down, make an appointment at your paint protection film installation specialist, and I have some in my area, and everybody knows those ones in your area. I generally go there right away. I get that done so you don't have any incurred new rock chips or anything. And usually you can get a better product, more of it installed instead of the 18-inch hood or the 24-inch hood. Sometimes you get a full hood, full front fenders, A-pillars, rocker panels, and all of that. And you can do it all for probably half the money that the dealer is offering for the substandard install. So most of the time, that's what I've personally experienced. Glass etching is pointless. Floor mats can be handy, but you can often find some great options either on Amazon or other aftermarket options. There's lots of great opportunities there for save some money on floor mats. Winter tires, never buy from the dealer, in my opinion. Definitely know the specifications. I'd suggest go to a quality tire shop and get yourself a tire rim shot and get yourself a set there, or at least start pricing it out there. And undercoating is a waste of time. Most cars have quality metals now that they're built out of, and a lot of cars now are built of composites, plastics, carbon fiber, aluminum. So most of these cars nowadays don't need it. They wouldn't rust anyway. So to put a bunch of spray underneath is pointless. And even fabric protection, usually quite pointless too, because a lot of cars are leather. So you can treat that anyway. You're going to have to treat it as you own it. That's part of owning a vehicle. A lot of them are pleather. The fabrics are higher quality. And quite frankly, you don't need any of that other material. Usually it's only temporary anyway. You slide your ass in and out of the seat, 10 or 20 times, and a lot of the quality of that substance is more or less ground out anyway. So most of that is really a waste of time, a waste of money, and it's particularly at the dealer level, they'll offer it for you out of convenience, absolutely, but it's going to cost you a lot more in the end, and definitely even worse, they're going to incorporate it into your monthly payments. So if you're dealing with a 10% interest charge on your vehicle, all of those pieces are compositely, all of those parts and pieces and extras and add-ons have interest charges just slapped right on top of them. So instead of paying that $8,400 after a 9-year, 8-year loan term, you might end up paying $14,000 for all those extra widgets, which now have depreciated into nothing because your winter tires are bald and the paint protection film needs a reinstall because the vehicle's 7 years old and it's turning yellow. Glass hatching is pointless, hasn't done anything for you, and you get the gist. So that's some of the biggest mistakes as my personal experience taking from buying cars, selling cars for years. You definitely don't want to make those mistakes. And hopefully that helps all of you avoid some of the classic mistakes that buyers make today at the dealer. And with all of that said, everybody, check that out. This, in fact, will put Ram dealers out of business, virtually guaranteed. Hope to see each and every one of you on the next one. We'll all see you real soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.